In this video, you will learn how to formulate a strategy in under 10 minutes. Don't believe me? Let's jump right in. Hi there. My name is Ruben Ugarte. I'm an expert in strategic decisions, and I help companies formulate strategies on a regular basis. And there's a process I use, which is similar to many of the other frameworks out there, but I want to walk you through it and show you actually exactly the whiteboards and the slides and how I approach a strategy session when you have 5, 10, 15 people in the room. The whole thing is going to take less than 10 minutes. Of course, the process itself that you might run might take, let's say, a day. I typically take 6 hours when I run this, but you'll see that it's relatively straightforward and something you can do on your own if you're willing. So let's jump right in and let me switch into my iPad, which is actually what I use also in the sessions. I love to use this whiteboard tool called Miro.com, M-I-R-O. No financial stake here. It's just really good. And when I prepare for a session, there's steps that happen before then, but I typically break it down like this. We might have 2 sessions, which may be just simply one in the morning, one in the afternoon, or perhaps over multiple days if we're doing it remotely. First, I like to define strategy. Everyone has their own definition of strategy. I just think it's helpful if we all have the same working definition. So I just give them my definition, and then that's the one we use for the session. Right? If they want to switch it after, no problem. So to me, strategy is about figuring out who you should be as an organization, your identity. And from there, all these different things flow when it comes to decisions and actions. I then tackle these two together, right? Purpose and vision. I'm going to have another video on the YouTube channel soon where I dive deeper into the trifecta of mission, vision, and values. But for now, in the session, what I'm really focusing on is I want to understand what is the organization's purpose? Why are you here? This can be a mission statement, but don't confuse the two. To me, purpose can be captured just simply in bullet points. We're here for this, 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 this. It doesn't have to be a clever, very well thought out mission statement, which I'm skeptical about, but that's a different video. Once we know the purpose, vision to me is the way that you can know if you're fulfilling or you're making progress towards that purpose. This is really a summary of this entire strategy session. So your purpose may be to, take rocket ships into space, which is what Tesla's mission is. And then your vision would be, over the next 2 years, 3 years, we are going to build a different kind of rocket. We're going to expand the supply chain across the world, and we're going to hire specific roles, whatever it may be. So vision is a way of knowing, this is the tangible things we're doing that's getting us closer to our purpose. But I covered it here as well. And then when we finish the session, you'll see me, I come back and we'll do a quick summary. So very simple, purpose and vision. I'm not going to spend more than 30 minutes on these 2 items, just to give you some time in. Then I like to move into perception. And I use this axis of consciousness of actions and awareness of environment. To keep it simple, I'm not going to dive into the details, but what I'm really trying to do here is understand how does your team perceive the organization? What do you do well? What do you don't do well, right? The goal is to flesh out any disagreements. Does someone feel the company is doing really well and someone else doesn't? Why? Why is that? What's the gap and how do we bridge it? And again, I think in the future, I'll do a video on this consciousness of actions and awareness environment, which is a key element of the framework I use, which is called Sentient. And you can look it up as well. Next, I switch into shifts. And shifts to me, it's all about trends. So what is going on in the world, right? This could be birth rates, changes in demographics, changes in the industry. AI could be a trend. And I just get people to shout them out as individuals. And we might have, 5, 10, 15 sticky notes with different trends that they are seeing that are relevant for this organization. And I'll show you how we use this in a second. I also introduced this catch-all I call critical issues. And I just simply use this to capture any ideas that someone brings up that are important, but not relevant to the specific point in time in our session. So someone might say, hey, if we're going to go down this route, then we really need to change how we compensate employees. Okay, that's a valid issue, but we don't have time right now to discuss the exact details of this compensation plan. Let's put them in the critical issues list and we'll review it along the way. Then we get into the meat of the strategy. which is the areas. Some people call them factors, focus areas, priorities, doesn't matter. Basically, what we're trying to do is select a handful, I like 3, of areas where you can make a real big impact. So I give them this list to give them a sense. So some of the items here might be technology, might be culture, services, pricing, partnerships, whatever it may be. And what I want them to do actually is to make a list of areas in their own language. So in this example, which I actually took from a real strategy session, I just removed the sensitive client information. They came up with 9. And this is the language they use to think about it. This is how they think about customers, which they call clients. This is how they think about services and products and so on. Once we have our big lists, I put them back into groups and they do a short list of the top 3. So usually, you have 2, 3, 4 groups. They each choose 3, and then through a group discussion, we finalize and have a group consensus on what the top 3 are. Usually you have to remove a few and add others. And of course, not everyone gets what they want, but at least you end up with 3 that represent the majority of the group. Once we have those 3, and again, you might have 4, 5, but this is a small number. You're not going to have 12. So I always give 3, so I have a little bit of room to maybe end up with a 4th, maybe a 5th one to be able to accommodate as many people as possible. Then we have a litmus test, and I go and I take the shifts, the individual sticky notes from here, and I just put them as criteria for a litmus test. So they might say, what? A big trend for us is competition. Another trend is consumer expectations. Another trend is technology. Whatever it is, 4 or 5 trends. I'll summarize them. I'll group them, if there's some that are similar. And then just simply say, for the areas you chose, does this help you deal with that trend of competition? Does this help you deal with the trend around consumer expectations? Does this help you deal with the trend around technology? Typically, you find if you've done this well up to this point, the answer is yes. But it just helps you highlight that if they made choices on something that's not relevant and it's not really going to help them deal with the future, this will surface it. So that's session number 1. Very fundamental and what I would consider the core or the bulk of the strategy. In session number 2, it's really much more straightforward. I really want to give them a bridge to implementation. So we have all these great ideas. There's 3, 4 areas we want to tackle. We can see the shifts around us. We know the perception. How do we go about doing it, right? So session 2, the afternoon or a different day, it's really about making things a little bit more tactical. So we do divert from strategy. One should be aware of that. But this is just to make it practical for the team to implement. So we start with some kind of audacious goal for each area. Which may be a quantitative goal. We want to make $25 million in revenue annually. It might be a qualitative goal. We want a certain level of employee satisfaction or a certain level of employee turnover or churn, whatever it is. And again, put them into groups, let them come up with audacious goals for the areas they chose, and then we discuss, and then we join them together into 1 or 2 goals for each area that represent the majority of the people. Then we look at metrics. What are some of the metrics that they can use along the way to know if they are progressing towards that goal? They typically have these metrics already. I just want to make them aware of it. We're going to track revenue. We're going to track employee surveys. We're going to track customer satisfaction, whatever it is. And if we need to add anything else, this is a great chance to note it. And then we look at issues. So naturally, we're in strategy. We're not going to solve everything in 6 hours, but we can start to say, if we want to do this kind of revenue, then one of the issues, if we go back, right, was compensation plan. We have to figure that out. So we'll simply note it here under each item. And here you might have 3, 4 action items from each one. And they are typically the ones that need to be tackled next. It might not be everything someone needs to tackle over the entire strategy, the entire 2 years, 3 years, but a starting point. Again, a bridge, a way for them to know what exactly they should be doing next week, next month. Again, everyone can contribute. So this is a chance for people to provide their input. Then we look at failure points, which I really like. So to me, failure points are anything that can get in the way of strategy. So it could be a lack of accountability. There's not enough monitoring. There's not enough resources. There's pushback, political issues, whatever it is. Get people to shout individual things, put them into sticky notes like before. And then we also talk a little bit about how to prevent them or how to deal with them along the way. What can we do as a team to ensure that we're all accountable? What can we do to ensure that this doesn't get shut down by people who are not in the room? And then lastly, just capture some dates on monitoring. When are we going to look at this again? Next month, next quarter, maybe what dates? Let's put it in the calendar. Let's put 60 minutes, 90 minutes in the calendar. And then we finish them. And that's it, right? So session 2 is very straightforward, kind of feels faster because we already did a lot of the sort of hard thinking in session 1. That's how I approach a strategy session over 6 hours. And when you see me, if you were to see me do this in front of people, I'm doing lots of notes. So as things are coming up, I am trying to convert it into something that makes sense for everybody. Someone may say, hey, we have these 2 areas of customer. How do we deal with it? So, I might do, okay, this is what we have. What is 3? Blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of sort of on the fly ad hoc stuff that I do. Just based on my experience and what I tend to see and what the client might need. And in the future, I might do a video on some of this hidden sort of exercises and captures I might be doing as the group is processing ideas. But this is the structure that I'm following. So even if I divert into something different, typical real sort of strategy session, you'll see writing all the way to the right and left, scribbles and bad drawings and things like that. But this is a good structure, so you can follow it. You might want to remove steps that you may not find as relevant. Fair enough. You may want to add your own steps. That's also fine. But having a structure, an agenda that you're following through, and people know, hey, we're now doing this exercise and then another and another. It's really helpful. All right, that is it. Pretty close to 10 minutes, if not perhaps just a little over. A quick overview on how you can formulate strategy rapidly within your team. Now, I will say one more point. It's always helpful to have someone do it for you. I'm not saying myself, but if you can find someone to help you facilitate this, or simply who is an outsider who's guiding you in this process, whether it could be an employee or not, that's always helpful. It can be nice to have someone ensure that you're actually sticking to time, and it can be hard to participate fully while also maintaining the process. So think about that too. Who can help you do this? Whether someone outside or someone in your organization who can fill that role of facilitator. There's a bunch of things I want to do in the future. I think as I dive deeper into many of these concepts, what does this exercise really mean? What about this? What about that? What happens when you have tricky questions or tricky issues? So I have a bunch of ideas for future videos, so stick around for that. For now, in the description box below, you'll find several links. First, there's my newsletter on Substack called Growth Needle, which is fantastic. I dive into many of these ideas in more detail. It's contemporary. There's all these modern issues going on. I really, really enjoy writing that, and readers really enjoy consuming it. So check that out. Highly recommend that. It's free. There's also a link to my website, some of the books I've written. And finally, make sure to like, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. It always helps the channel and others. And then I would love to hear your approach or your comments in the section below, in the comment section below, about this overview, the 10 minutes and so on I covered. What stuck with you? What works? What doesn't? Let me know. Until next time, talk soon.